Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of the Needless Things Podcast of 2019. I called up my pal, Mike Gordon, because I wanted to talk to him about some stuff from 2018 and some stuff that we're excited about coming up this year. We had a great conversation. I know you guys are going to enjoy it. But before we get to that, I want to mention a couple of things. Today, this is Thursday morning. I am once again home from work early in the morning, recording this intro just for you guys. And while I was at work, unfortunately, I learned that a couple of heroes of mine had passed away. And you know, I'm getting older. They're all getting older. That's what's happening now. And the first one was Mean Gene Okerlund, who was one of the many voices of my childhood, one of the many influences on my desire to hold a microphone. Mean Gene was the guy when I was a kid and watching WWF. He was the voice of that company to me. As much as I love Vince at the announce table, as much as I love Jesse Ventura, as much as I love Gorilla, Bobby Heenan, Mean Gene was the guy that was kind of the voice that we got our information from, because it was different from calling matches. He was almost like the guy that was in control, because he would be involved in crazy stuff, but when Mean Gene had the mic, it was time for business. He was obviously never putting himself over. He was always there to get across something that was going on. And then years later, when I would start watching WCW, Mean Gene was there as well and gave that company an air of legitimacy that they would otherwise not have had, because we all grew up with Mean Gene, and to have him in WCW putting that product over, conducting those interviews, was a huge deal. And one of my favorite Mean Gene moments, this is the one that always comes up, is when Rick Steiner, he had ended up in a wheelchair, and I honestly can't remember exactly why he was in the wheelchair, what had happened, but Gene's interviewing him, and one of my favorite uses of Gene, Rick Steiner goes, "I can't trust him, Gene," and just the way that he said that, it's always like, when I think of Mean Gene, I think of Rick Steiner saying, "I can't trust him, Gene," just like that. And I had the privilege of meeting Mean Gene last year at Days of the Dead in Atlanta, and he was great. He had some stories. He was very lively. He looked well. I was shocked to see that he'd passed, and but you know, it's one of those that he lived a full life. You can't be too sad. It's a shame he's gone, but wow, what a life he had. And then the other one, unfortunately, was Super Dave Osborne, who was another childhood hero of mine. One of the earliest cable shows I remember watching was the Super Dave show, which at this point right now, and I haven't looked it up because you guys know, I like to think of things off the top of my head. I don't sit down and look up specific information unless I feel it's really important. And this is my memories. So I think it was just the Super Dave show, but you know, the ridiculous stunts and his abrasive, off-putting personality that when I was a kid, I didn't really get what he was doing. I just liked how ridiculous he seemed, that this grown-up adult was sort of having these halfway temper tantrums and these stunts that never went right. He thoroughly entertained me, and I haven't seen the show in years. Obviously, I've kept up with him through Curb Your Enthusiasm and other things that he's done. He was on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Well, I watched those last year, but from what I understand, they've been around since like 2015 or maybe even older than that. But he was on an episode of that, just as funny as ever, just as great as ever. And I just loved Super Dave. And obviously, being a Dave, I have at many times during my life been referred to as Super Dave. So there's that as well. But Godspeed to both of those gentlemen, and thank you for being heroes in the entertainment field that inspired me and what I do and have done so for years. Moving on, one thing I'll do every once in a while here on the Needless Things podcast is talk about what's going on in the toy world. And it's right there in the intro, toys. And January has, over the last few years, really started to become an exciting time to be a collector because very often new licenses get launched, as happened years ago when Mattel got WWE and they launched the first wave of Elite figures on January 1st, or just time to refresh lines, time to do new things. So that brings me to the other day on the way home from work. I stopped at Walmart. I hate Walmart. It pains me to ever have to buy anything there, but there are times when if I'm on my way home from work at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's nowhere else I can go for certain things. So Walmart it is. And I've got to look at the toy section, of course. And the other day, looked in the Walmart toy section, and they had all of the new Captain Marvel, Marvel Legends figures. Now, I didn't want all of them, and I don't particularly care about the Kree Sentry Build-A-Figure. I mean, look, if I end up with the other parts, I'll build it for sure, because it's a big, cool robot. But it's not anything that I'm going to spend extra money to have to get. So I bought all the movie figures. I had to think about whether I really wanted the one of Carol in the leather jacket, but it's a great head sculpt, and the leather jacket look is really cool, so I got that one too. And it comes with her cat, which I know nothing about Captain Marvel. I know about Carol Danvers. I know about Miss Marvel from back in the 80s when she had some relevance to the X-Men books, and Rogue took her powers and whatever. But I don't... Modern Miss Marvel, I know nothing. So I don't know anything about her cat, which in the comics is Chewie, but in the movie is called Goose, which I guess is a Top Gun tribute, which makes sense. So Goose comes with the leather jacket figure, and then Nick Fury. They look fantastic. They look absolutely phenomenal. The head sculpts are great, and they're out there. And according to our head of research, Ryan Schweck, what Marvel has done, or what Hasbro has done, is they shipped and I'm assuming these will all hit all different retail, but for January, they shipped the Captain Marvel Legends to Walmart. They shipped the new Black Panther wave with the M'Baku Build-A-Figure to GameStop, and they shipped something else to Target, and I can't remember what he said it was. Maybe it was a new... I don't think it was a new Spider-Man wave, but something went to Target. So... there you go. The three different things showing up in three different places. And then on top of that, on the way into work today, I found the new Star Wars Black Series Archives figures, which this is an offshoot of the 6-inch Star Wars Black Series, where they're re-releasing older figures that are hard to find now, or maybe were hard to find when they first came out. Because I'll tell you right now, the first wave in this Archives series is... Rebel pilot Luke, who was in the first wave of Black Series figures way back in the day, and I actually bought because it was new Star Wars toys and I had to check him out. But he has a new head sculpt and the new process that Hasbro is using to do face paint that looks incredible. It's like a digital painting process, and it's giving us these incredible likenesses that have been on all of the movie Marvel Legends and the new Star Wars figures. So that Luke, it's the same Rebel pilot Luke, but he has a new head, and it looks kind of weird. It's really, really, really well defined, but it doesn't necessarily look like Mark Hamill. And then the other three figures in the wave are IG-88, Bosk, and Boba Fett, all of which were very difficult to find. I think I might have seen Bosk at retail, but Boba Fett I ordered one online, and I cannot remember because I'm a big Mandalorian collector, and with Boba Fett in particular, I try and get a boxed one and a loose one. And I'm actually having to turn around right now to see if I do have a boxed Black Series Boba Fett, as well as the white one they put out, the prototype armor or whatever it's called. But anyway, so those 3 bounty hunters were hard to find when they first came out, and now if you're willing to shell out for them, it's gonna be like a couple $100 probably to get all 3 of those, if not more. And since they just released Forlom, which you can find the review of Forlom on needlessthingspodcast.com, and then Dengar and Zuckuss, who's a Disney Store exclusive, and I really should have reviewed Dengar and Zuckuss as well. They're fantastic figures. Forlom, though, is the one that blew me away to the point where I really had to review him. But now all of the bounty hunters are out in the Black Series scale, which is great because I collect bounty hunters, and I've got a couple of different 3.75-inch versions of them. I've got the Galactic Heroes, I've got the Lego versions, and now I've got the Black Series version. So pretty stoked about that. And then finally, before we get into the actual episode, something that I wanted to talk to Mike Gordon about, but that didn't end up coming up, was Black Mirror Bandersnatch. Now, I am not a huge fan of Black Mirror. It's fine, and I respect what they're doing, and I don't look at it and think, oh, this sucks. It's just not quite tonally and presentationally what I want it to be most of the time. There have been a few episodes that I really liked. I liked the Star Trek one, obviously, and there have been a couple others that I enjoyed. But it's, as a matter of fact, the very first episode, the one with the pig, I thought was tremendous. But there have been more that haven't quite achieved what I was hoping for. And so overall, I can't say I'm a fan of the show, but I'm a fan of what the show wants to do. And Bandersnatch, which I'm sure you've seen online, but or talk about online, is a choose-your-own-adventure Netflix movie. And it's just something completely different. It's crazy. It's fascinating. It's interesting. It's wild. It really is, to me, it was a very compelling experiment. I would not call it a movie. I would not call it a game. I would call it a look at what's possible in the future of home entertainment. Because this sort of thing, this sort of interactive thing, has really been a long time coming, and has been tried to some extent in other mediums. But for me, this one was very, very successful. It's very compelling. Once you get through it, you want to go back and find other options, other endings, other storylines. And me and Mrs. Troublemaker sat down and watched this thing for a good 2.5 or so hours. Just seeing how many different options came up. So, don't go into it expecting this phenomenal movie, which, by the way, I think the performances are incredible. The way it's shot and put together is fantastic. Like, it is of the highest quality. But the point is not just a linear story. So don't go in expecting that. The point is a commentary on the interactive nature of entertainment now, on free will, and on the past being an immutable thing. I thought it was fascinating. I've thought about it every day since we watched it. I want to go back to it, but unfortunately I have to do this thing called my day job. But if you see negative things about it online, I think that's people who weren't necessarily interested in this form of entertainment, and maybe, I don't want to say they didn't get it, because that makes them sound dumb, and I don't think that people who didn't like it are necessarily dumb. They just weren't into it in the way that I was. But if being able to take part in a weird meta narrative is something that appeals to you, and you've got a pretty open mind, you really need to check out Bandersnatch. It is it's what you've come to expect from Black Mirror, but in my opinion, taken to the next level. So anyway, there you go. I think that's the intro. That's the whole thing. I made little notes. I talked about everything I wanted to talk about, and now it's time to talk to our pal Mike Gordon about the past, the present, and the future. Enjoy. Mike Gordon, welcome to the Needless Things podcast, and welcome to 2019.
Howdy. It smells the same so far as 218.
Yeah, it kind of does.
So far,
it smells
smell
like,
is the same.
It smells like rain.
Yeah, that's exactly what it smells like.
It smells like
exactly
rain.
what 2018 smelled a lot like that too.
And my knees hurt. But I think that's less the rain and more the fact that today was a mad scramble of putting all of the Christmas stuff back in storage.
Oh, it's that time, huh?
Yeah, today was the day. It had to happen. Because I like to have it up through New Year's because it's pretty lights and everything. Like, that's appropriate for New Year. But once New Year's Eve is done, it's all got to go. You got to box it up. So I've been running up and down flights of stairs all day long. And I'm ready to sit down and talk to you.
Well, I am glad. Thanks again for the invitation.
Oh, I'm thrilled that we're kicking off the year like this. One of my resolutions in 2019, Mike Gordon back on the show once a month.
Well, I'm all for that.
I was getting ready to say I realized I have not consulted you about this resolution.
Yeah, it's funny because I listened to the Aquaman review that you and Ryan did, which was fun. And at the end of it, you mentioned that, we've got Mike Gordon coming on a couple episodes. I'm like, really? That should be enjoyable. I can't wait to hear those.
I think it was more, I want to have Mike Gordon back on more episodes. But, no. It was because you and I had discussed the Bond versus Bond episode. There are a couple episodes that we had talked about, like 2017 probably, that just for one reason or another kept not fitting into the schedule. So they were Mike Gordon episodes that have not happened yet.
Well, and again, like I said, I look forward to those episodes, and I might be the only one who listened to that and thought that out loud, or even internally.
I in no way meant to try and remove your agency.
Well, I'm always glad to be in the Phantom Zone, sir.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. One of the things I want to talk about to you is what you have seen of the DC Universe streaming service.
Very little. I saw the price point and went, maybe later.
Which is understandable. I don't begrudge anyone that looked at it and was like, I'm not adding another service for that price. I can't do it, especially with what they're offering. It's not worth it to me. Like, anybody that feels that way, I totally understand. Who I have a problem with are the people who did not subscribe and who are giving negative reviews, basically, to Titans, which they have not seen. Now, I totally understand based on the trailers that they've put out there, the initial trailer with the infamous fuck Batman in it, and then the recent trailer that had the Robin versus Batman for the season finale.
Right.
I totally understand a negative response to the trailers, but there are a lot of people out there who are saying things like, this show is trash based on those trailers. You haven't seen the show, so maybe shut your mouth.
Yeah, that I hate that anytime that happens.
Yeah. Anytime that happens with anything, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I wasn't excited by what I saw on either of those things you mentioned.
I understand.
So, but that doesn't mean that, I've learned through some experience, aka Gotham, for example, that sometimes what you see doesn't really fit with what the show actually is. Like your perceptions of what the show might be. And then, a lot of times once you let go of your expectations, and your preconceived notions, then you can allow what the actual, product is, whatever that is, a movie, a TV show. I remember seeing, when I was younger, I remember specifically watching an episode of, Siskel and Ebert. I don't know if anybody knows who those two guys are anymore, but I know I'll date myself. But anyway, that's okay. I can pick up the tab usually. So
hey,
I know, right? But anyway, I can't remember the movie that they were reviewing, but Siskel in particular was saying that that he was unhappy with the movie because a certain character wasn't on screen enough, and he was interested in that character, and he said, I wanted to see more of this character. I wish that, that had been more of the story, or more, that character had been in the movie more. And Roger just sort of coldly, shut him up by saying, hey, Gene, why don't you review the movie you saw, not the movie you wanted to see?
That's fantastic. And we've probably all been guilty of doing that.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. There's a lot of times where, like I said, I looked at the trailers and everything that I've seen for Titans, and Titans is a important entity for me. I loved. I grew up with the Titans. I loved Robin. I loved all the characters. Starfire, Nightwing.
Well, you were there for the big era of the Titans, right?
Yes,
Perez
yeah.
Wolfman.
I absolutely was. So, and I've always thought that the Titans were, should be something that we should see on TV or in movies, whatnot. I always thought that they had that capability. So I've been excited about seeing this. And the trailers, I was like, ooh, they're going in a different direction than I would have, that's for sure.
Sure.
So I'm curious to check it out. But right now, and I probably will be, I'm thinking that this year I will be subscribing to 2 new subscription services, which streaming services.
Yeah, right.
DC and Disney Plus is probably the other one. I see myself getting those.
Having subscribed after San Diego Comic-Con, because they did the offer for 16 months, I think it was, for the price of a year. It was something like that. And I knew I was going to have to check it out. So I went ahead and signed up for that because you paid the whole thing up front. And it just happened to be financially convenient at the time. So I did it. And I've got to say, the service itself, as far as the DC Universe streaming service, it's about as lean as you think it is. Especially if you're like me and you collect a lot of physical media, you probably own most of the movies they have available. The animated stuff, I'll give them credit. They've got Static Shock is on there, all the old Super Friends, a lot of stuff that I don't own is on there and available. The Batman animated series, of course, being a big sucker, I had already pre-ordered the Blu-rays that were coming out at the end of the year. So that's on there in high def, but it doesn't have all the special features of the Blu-rays. It's a different thing, but it looks great. It is the menus and stuff need a little bit of work, but are very good compared to other things that I've tried to use. There's nothing menu-wise that's a problem. It just could be better. But, man, as far as the new content, Titans I am a huge fan of. Me and Mrs. Troublemaker, every single Friday, were there, as soon as we could watching it. It's very compelling. Yes, it is gritty and probably not necessarily the Titans a lot of fans want to see. However, in the type of universe that they're using, I feel like the showrunners, the creators, have a tremendous knowledge of the DC universe. They have a huge respect for these characters. They're just doing things Nothing that happens in the show is out of character for any of these characters. But it is happening in a world that's different from the traditional Titans comics that you would be thinking of. But man, it's such good television. I recently on needlessthingspodcast.com, I put up my best of 2018, and Titans to me was the best streaming show that came out last year.
Wow. Okay.
The acting is amazing. The story.
Does that include Netflix though?
Well, I had, yeah, it does. Because I had to separate, because I know for the purposes of like the Emmys and the Golden Globes, I think regular television and streaming television are kind of all one category. And I have to separate them out because I think streaming television has to do something a little bit different from regular television. Now, granted, DC parses them out a week at a time like Hulu does. They don't just drop it all like Netflix does. So that is an even different category of scripting and planning. I think there are big differences there. But anyway, yeah, I had streaming, which includes Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, basically internet TV, and then regular television, which is you turn it on or watch it off the DVR or whatever. They were two different categories for me. So yeah, Titans was best new show.
Okay, that's fair.
Glow was best streaming show. But yeah, we love it, and it ended. If you watched those trailers and didn't like what you saw, just know that you are not seeing the whole story and you're not getting the context at all. And it's my opinion that they very purposely made those trailers as provocative as they could.
Yes.
Because those of us who are going to subscribe, who are going to watch this show, are going to watch it no matter what. What they need is internet optics, word of mouth, discussion. They need Titans trending on Twitter. They need Titans trending on Facebook. And putting those trailers out the way that they did achieved that. So it's a matter of they manipulate what was available to get the most press and talk available. And I think they did a great job of it. Now, I don't know how the service is doing. I don't know how successful it has been, but I think it's fair to say it's still in its formative stages. This year, when they're launching, hang on, I have my list. This year, launching Doom Patrol, Swamp Thing, Stargirl, the new season of Young Justice, the Harley Quinn cartoon, Metropolis is in development. We'll see how that goes. But this is going to be the year where they either become a huge new entity or they become just valuable enough for like somebody else to buy. And I'll say that, and I gloss over this a lot because I bought this for the like television style entertainment, but you do get access to the comics as well. Their comic reader is solid. They are slowly adding and rotating comics in. Usually relevant to media. Like when Aquaman came out, they put a bunch of old Aquaman stuff up that you could read and check out. I'm not big for reading comics in any form other than an actual comic book, but I did go through and like, it's pretty easy to read them even on your phone, which impresses me. So, that's there as well. But having watched Titans and loving Titans, I am very, very excited to see Doom Patrol, Swamp Thing, and Stargirl. And I'm curious to know what you think about this, Mike, because I think you probably know a little bit more about the JSA than I do. Have you noticed that Stargirl is essentially turning into a JSA show?
I could see where that would happen, and that I would be excited by that. Yeah, the shows that are coming, I don't see how, as a DC fan, I can just ignore because. Like you mentioned, Swamp Thing, Doom Patrol, and Stargirl, with so much JSA content, I'm like, no, I have to get this.
Well, Doom Patrol on Titans was as weird as you would think it should be.
Yeah, that should be the Doom Patrol should be like as quirky as possible.
Man, and they didn't shy away from, and I'm not as familiar with Doom Patrol either, because it's something that's a little outside of my like superhero stuff that every once in a while I would check out, like Hellblazer or whatever, but I'm not as well versed in that side of the DCU, but like they didn't shy away from Elasti-Woman. Like they didn't try and sex her up any. Like she is horrendous when she's not concentrating, and I don't know if that's from the comics or not. But they didn't shy away from the horrible things about the members of Doom Patrol at all. Brendan Fraser was absolutely fantastic as Robot Man. I was blown away by just one episode of Titans, how well they gave us these characters without sitting down and giving us an origin story for each of them, which I assume they'll get a little bit more into in the Doom Patrol show. But just looking at this cast, and I'd actually forgotten that Alan Tudyk was Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, the cast is amazing.
And they're doing the same thing with Stargirl. They've already cast Star-Spangled Kid, Dr. Midnight, Hourman, Wildcat, and Joel McHale and Henry Thomas. I mean, those two names alone are a very specific kind of casting for that show. And it shows me that that DC is very serious about what they're doing with all of these shows that are not, by the way, necessarily all connected.
Okay. I thought maybe they would be, but I mean, it's not. It's cool if they're not. But.
Doom Patrol and Titans obviously are. Yeah. But Swamp Thing and Stargirl apparently are going to be different things. I don't know if I want to say different universes, because I'm not sure if they're looking at it that way. But they said to not necessarily expect all of this to be tied together, because they want to preserve a certain tone for each show. Apparently their determination is that Swamp Thing is a horror show. And sometimes it's hard when you have things that are so tonally different to put them in the same universe together. It's easy in the comics. I think it's a little harder on television. But it means that they're not going to be obligated to go along with other showrunners' visions for certain things. So I'm excited to see how that all comes together, and I'm very happy to be a subscriber at this point.
Well, very cool. That's good to hear. Like I said, I've got a lot of streaming services right now that I use, and I've been looking at those, going, do I really use those as much as I would that I'm paying for them? You know?
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, Netflix, I think at this point is pretty necessary. Like, I mean, I know for some people it might not be, but for people like us, it is necessary. I avoided Hulu. I had it for a little while, a couple years ago, but I haven't seen anything until recently that has compelled me to rejoin, except I know that Veronica Mars is starting up a new season on Hulu this year, so I will be subscribing to Hulu this year, at least for a short amount of time.
Right.
But I do see myself getting, the DC one as well as Disney, of course.
Yeah, Disney Plus that's a no-brainer. But I mean, that's the thing about that one is they already have so much content that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I think in a lot of ways, and I have to give props to the WWE for this. Their network has really, to me, set the standard of what a streaming service should be. Mm-hmm. New content, sure. Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing how much new content the WWE gives you on a weekly basis when their product seems so limited.
With the Edge and Christian show and the backstage or the ride along and like all the animated stuff. Like, it's crazy how much they're creating.
Yeah, and they've got a cooking show starting up. I think has it already started, but they got a cooking show, of course. And then, of course, the NXT, NXT UK, all the pay-per-view. I mean, they deliver a ton of content, new content every month. And you have this huge vault of archive stuff that you can access at your fingertips at any time you want to.
You can get your money's worth with any, one aspect of the network. Yeah. Like if it was just the pay-per-views, if it was just the original content, if it was just the archives, which I guess we probably shouldn't say too loud.
But it has spoiled me to think that, because I'm like, well, and I think DC has tried that. I mean, obviously they just don't have as much archive stuff to offer as, say, the WWE does. But I expect, my expectations for Disney is really right up there with WWE as far as, man, if I can watch any, Disney animated movie at my fingertips at any time, I mean, that alone is worth, whatever it's going to be, $10 a month or whatever.
I'll tell you what excites me, and this is so funny, but they're an often overlooked aspect of Disney is all of the old live action stuff.
Yeah,
like all the old Kurt Russell movies and the Herbie movies. Just having those, because they aren't, you can't just go to a store and buy them. And Disney doesn't seem to, which I'm a little concerned that they may not even show up on the service for a while. But if you're looking to pad out what you're offering, they're certainly there. But they don't seem to look at those as much as they do a lot of their animated stuff and a lot of the fairy tale stuff.
I think it's going to be interesting for Disney to see what they do, because previously they've spent the last, I don't know, we'll say 40 years limiting access to their content.
Sure.
And in a way to make it as profitable as possible. It's like, hey, we're going to release this on video, but it's only a limited time.
Well,
this is going to be available on DVD, but only limited time.
And an aspect of that is also, it's not just, although this probably works into the profitability, but it's also keeping it prestigious, giving it a certain level of specialness, and granted, doing it in a very artificial way, but it does make that content, it gives it a different value level than, anybody else's animated movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's helped add to the mystique and the prestige, as you mentioned, certainly. And so, but now, are they just going to say, okay, everybody has access to the vault now, and so anything is available at any time? That seems to be, it's difficult for me to believe that they're going to do that. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. So it'll be really interesting to see what their Disney Plus service looks like.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because in our heads we think, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff Disney has available. But you're right; it does seem to be expecting a bit much to think that it's all just going to be there.
Yeah, and even if they rotate stuff out, maybe that, I could see them trying to do that.
Sure.
Within the content. But to me, like I said, I think the WWE has proven that people will join up, and that allows, more, even if the people aren't happy with, the new content you're providing, the old school, it appeals to the old school and the new people who are joining. Like, it's just, it seems like it's worth it. But we'll see how they react. I think one streaming service that I subscribed to this year was Full Moon.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, I did. And I have been very disappointed with them. Not because of their products. Obviously I know what I'm getting into with Full Moon. But I was hoping that with Full Moon, and when I first joined, It's weird. When I first joined, I think I had access to all of their. Well, for example, I had access to all the Puppet Master movies.
Sure.
So if I wanted to watch the Puppet Master movies, 1 through whatever it is now, I was like, I had access to do that. But something happened where, they restricted it. Like they only have access to certain movies for certain months or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm like, look, if I'm subscribing to Full Moon every month and I don't have access to all their Puppet Master movies all the time, then this isn't worth it.
Yeah, that's an odd move for a service that focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
To pull. That's very strange.
So that one was a disappointing one for me because and that I did have it in my head that I was going to go through all the Puppet Master movies this year, and I got to the first one, and then by the time I got to the second one, they asked me to pay to watch it, and I was like, I'm already paying, thank you. And so that was disappointing.
Well, Mike Gordon, I've got some news for you. I happen to own all of the Puppet Master movies.
Of course you do.
And you are welcome to borrow that box set anytime you want.
Well, I appreciate that.
For a fee of $2.95.
Of course.
No. I'll tell you one that disappointed me. I got very, very excited about New Japan Pro Wrestling early in the year last year.
Okay. Yes. I mean, obviously they were doing things. Is that the one that the big event that Jericho is part of?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I get that. I could not figure out how that worked.
Man, it was. I actually signed up because I don't know that they're even $10 a month. I think that one might have been $8 a month or something. But I signed up for it to watch an event that occurred prior to the big one. That was Jericho versus Kenny Omega.
Yes.
And it was so... Well, first of all, they didn't have an app. It was just a website that would direct you to events. And it was very difficult to use because it was all done in Japanese and clumsily translated to English.
Yeah, I could not figure out. Like, I wanted to see the big show, and I went to their website, and I can't figure this out.
Yeah, it was very, very frustrating. And if they could get somebody, maybe like our pal Rad Ranger, to sit down and actually design an app and an interface that would work internationally and wouldn't be as Japan-oriented, I'd sign up and I'd stick with it. If it had been as easy to use as the network, I would still have that subscription now. They'd still be getting my money now. But I had it for a month and just found it too frustrating to use and canceled. And I would be sitting there watching as much New Japan as I could because the product is fantastic. And they've got Don Callis Don Callis and Kevin Kelly are a great commentary team. They're like you could actually watch it with English commentary from those guys. But yeah, I just couldn't deal with it, and I was hoping before the end of the year they'd get it figured out, but they don't seem to have a whole lot of interest in making it as internationally available as they should.
Yeah, Look, I mean, it should be 101, user interface 101. I mean, if you can't figure that out, then you can't scratch your head. You're just basically turning customers away.
Yeah, well, and that's absolutely what it is. I'm sure, because I don't consider myself a casual wrestling fan, but I am it had better be easy for me to get to wrestling fan.
No, absolutely.
And I think most are probably like me.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're losing out on a lot of money and a lot of international attention. But to get back to, you brought up Disney Plus, to get back to that real quick, how is The Mandalorian looking to you? I'm not even, I can't say I'm invested in it yet. I haven't actually seen or read anything on it. And I got to tell you, last year after Rebels ended, I kind of
didn't pick up anything else that they were doing. I know that they had the other show that
Resistance.
Yeah, did you watch all of that? Was it worth it?
I haven't watched any of it.
Okay.
I didn't care for the trailer that I saw, and then initial reports were that it's very much a younger kids show, which it looks like, and that's fine. But
it's interesting because like both Clone Wars and Rebels kind of started out that way too. Right. And quickly, very quickly, it was clear that, oh no, there's something in here for me. So I kind of thought that even if I heard initial reports that said, oh, this is for, little kids, I thought, well, that's surely, that's going to change, or that could change once the show really starts going. But I've only talked to, I think, one person that's mentioned it, but I certainly don't see a lot of hype about it. And I haven't really seen much hype about other new material that's coming out for the streaming service. So obviously, if I have the streaming service and there's a Star Wars series, I'm going to watch it. But
yeah, I'm very excited about it. I love Jon Favreau, and I'm very interested to see what he does in Star Wars. But I'm also a big mark for Mandalorians. I've always loved Boba Fett, like since I was a kid.
Sure.
I just love that figure.
The best thing about the holiday special.
Yes, easily, although that's a pretty low bar to clear. And fortunately, he had a jetpack and a dragon with which to do it.
How dare you talk about B. Arthur that way?
Ew, man. But when Karen Traviss wrote the series of books focusing on Mandalorian culture and like a lot of the stuff that, well, she did a lot of stuff with Boba Fett. She did a lot of stuff with the Republic, with the clones, and really expanded. Now, granted, none of this counts anymore until Dave Filoni or somebody says that it counts. But just as a concept, I'm really into the Mandalorian culture. I loved what they did with it in Clone Wars. So I'm curious to see what they do, and the cast so far is absolutely phenomenal. You have the Viper from Game of Thrones, who, spoilers, I was very disappointed by how his character went out, so I'm anxious to see more from that actor. And then Nick Nolte, Carl Weathers, Werner Herzog is going to have a role on the show. I mean, this is something. I'm very excited about this, and I really want more. How did you feel about Solo?
I thought it was okay. It didn't make my top 10 of 2018.
Okay.
But it wasn't. I didn't. By no means did I hate it. It was okay. Yeah, that's what I'm really curious as to to find out, and maybe you already know this, but where the series takes place and when, and also. Because my understanding is that everything in Rebels is in continuity. So,
yes.
And they focused heavily, especially on the last season, with the Mandalorian. So I'm really curious to see what, if that picks up from there.
This is, I believe, post Jedi, pre Force Awakens, if I remember correctly. But. I'm very excited for more of that kind of. I love Solo. It made my top 5 last year. I've watched it several times. I enjoy it as much as. Matter of fact, I would say Solo. It's tough for me to compare Solo and Rogue One. I think Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie of the Disney era. But Solo is the one I'm going to end up watching more over the years, just because it's more fun.
It's got a happier ending.
Yes, absolutely. And out of that ending, man, I'm dying for more of those characters, and I hate that it underperformed. And I'll tell you what, I really wish that they had held Solo for December and put Mary Poppins back until maybe the spring, because I really think Solo would have done better if it had come out in December.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I think after I've seen Mary Poppins, which I loved, which did make my top 10, I think Christmas was the perfect time for that movie. But it was odd not having a Star Wars movie around Christmas. I will say that. So
well, and it was odd having one just a few months after having one.
Well, and, this is something, if you want to, we can get into at some point. But I'm really finding it interesting, like Disney. I realized when I made my top 10 and when I was looking at all the movies that I saw, I mean, I think half my movie-going funds this past year, went to Disney.
Sure.
And that, looking at the head at this year, 2019, it doesn't look like that's going to change. And now Disney seems to be stepping on itself a little bit.
They are absolutely. That's one of the things I was going to touch on later. Not only are they competing with themselves in the movie theaters, they're competing with themselves in the toy aisles, and I feel like it's hurting both industries.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I didn't know about the toys, but it makes sense. I mean, it's crazy to see, you're excited by these releases, but every month there's at least a Disney or two. Like last month or last year, I think it was in December, maybe late November, Disney released a version of the Nutcracker.
Yes.
And
the something realm,
something like that.
realms.
And I remember it looked like, I remember seeing the trailer and I'm like, that looks kind of interesting.
Yes.
But with everything else they had going on, it was like that got buried.
I completely forgot about it. By the time I was like, hey, whatever happened to that Nutcracker movie? It had come and gone.
Yeah. And I'm just it shocks me that they are releasing this year in 2019. They're releasing 3 updated quote unquote live action versions of their animated movies. 3 of them.
Yeah, it's a lot. And if you look, I'm so happy that they chose to move Battle Angel Alita back, because originally it was coming out on December 21st. And on December 21st, Bumblebee, Aquaman, and Mary Poppins all came out the same day.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, you got to get that Christmas, that Christmas box office money.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Which Holmes and Watson apparently failed to work out for that one.
Yeah, well.
And let me ask you, we'll get into Disney's near monopoly in a minute here, but real quick, I do want to ask you, you saw Into the Spider-Verse, right?
I did.
Where did that end up on your list? Because it was my favorite movie of 2018, possibly my favorite movie of the last few years.
It's definitely on my top 10. I've made this year, and I think I did this sort of last year too, where I'm just putting them in a top 10.
Yeah.
I'm not ranking them in that top 10.
Sure.
So, like, within my top 10, I'm not saying which one was number 1, which was, obviously there are some that are better than others, but the problem I ran into this year was that I probably saw about, we'll say maybe 15, 16 movies in the theater. And I got to the point when I was doing my top 10 of thinking, ooh, I don't know if I have 10 of these that I feel comfortable saying that they're my top 10. By default, I felt like some of them were getting in.
Right.
Just because I hadn't seen that many movies.
I ran into the same issue with a couple of things when I was trying to write down my best of. There were a few that I was like the Spider-Man video game is the best video game I played in 2018. But it's also the only video game I played or the only new video game I played in 2018. So I didn't bother putting that on the list because that's not really fair.
I know, like, from listening to your review of Aquaman, that I'm sure Aquaman made your top 10. It sounds like no problem.
No.
That's amazing to me. After your review of it, I thought for sure it's in there.
I loved it, but there were movies that I loved and were actually better movies.
I enjoyed Aquaman a lot, But at the end of the day, I was thinking, I don't know if I can put you in the top 10. I don't know if you're a quote unquote top 10 movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I struggled with that a little bit this year. So, I would like to say that I'm going to try to go out and see more movies this year, but I don't know if that's a thing that I'm actually going to do. So, nor should I. So,
well, it with me, if it's a big, like actually looking at the list of movies I wrote down prior to our conversation here, if it's a big event movie, I want to see it in the theater. Because there are absolutely movies that I regret missing in the theater or not getting out to see in 3D or whatever the case may be. So I do try to make it for event movies. But like for smaller stuff, for comedies, I don't need to see a comedy in the theater. I don't necessarily need to see a smaller horror movie in the theater unless it really excites me. But stuff like Captain Marvel, which the trailer looks phenomenal. I'm very, very excited about this movie.
Sure.
It's the next, granted it's not moving our story forward necessarily, but it's a necessary piece of the next part of the overall story. And a very exciting introduction of a new character that is obviously going to be huge in the coming years in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'm a big fan of Kong Skull Island. I really enjoyed her performance, and I can't remember her. Every time, I want to say Alison Brie every single time. But it's not Alison Brie. It's... Come on, Mike Gordon.
I
Are we both looking it up right now?
No, I'm not. I'm not looking it up. I am. I suppose I could.
Brie Larson.
There you go.
Brie Larson. I had the wrong portion of the wrong name wrong. So Brie Larson. I really liked her in Kong Skull Island. I've seen her in a couple other things. Not well enough to obviously to remember her name, but I think she has a good look. I think her presence is excellent. But man, her voice. Some of the lines she delivers in the trailer, I'm a little concerned about her toughness, I guess.
Okay.
Do you know what do you get what I'm talking about at all?
No.
Like at the end she has a "we're not going to take it anymore" line. Only it's kind of like we're not going to take it anymore. Like the delivery is off to me.
Gotcha. Well, the reason I say that is because I think I did. Did I see? Yeah, I think I saw the Captain America trailer, but I didn't really pay close attention.
Captain Marvel.
Marvel. That's right. Thank you. Which what are we talking about?
Neither one of us have any idea what we're talking about right now.
I know, and I haven't even been drinking, so I can't.
I haven't either. Maybe that's the problem.
Yes.
Maybe we need to go fix some beverages real quick.
Right. Time to break out the rum for sure.
Oh my gosh.
But I specifically with the Marvel movies, I am not paying attention to any pre-movie hype release marketing things at all.
Well, that's true because they do lie.
Well, not only do they lie, it's just to me unnecessary.
Right.
For 10 years, Marvel has proven that they're consistent, that they're a great product, and that I have enjoyed myself every single time I've gone to see a Marvel movie. Now, have I enjoyed myself sometimes more than others? Sure. But in my mind, there hasn't been any absolute stinkers. They've just been, consistently great. So, and I have no reason to doubt that this year, when we get at least 2 of them, that they're going to change that. So I'm just like, you just tell me when and where, and I will be there. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I'm on board with that too, and I can't help but watch that first trailer when it hits. I have to. I have a compulsion to sit and watch and look at it and figure out what we're getting. But beyond that, I try to avoid them. And I do want to be clear. I'm not worried about this movie in any way. I think it looks awesome. As a matter of fact, I bought all the figures yesterday morning on the way home. I'm very, very excited about it. I'm curious to see how she comes across in the context of the film, because it just based on the trailer, I have very, very, very slight minimal concerns that I'm sure will not be borne out in any way. And then after that, we have Endgame, which, I mean, it's going to be great. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't care to think about it. I'm not speculating at all.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And we didn't even need, like you said, we didn't need a trailer for that.
Nope.
Just tell me when it comes out.
Just tell me when and where. I'll be there. Thank you for telling me that it moved up a week. Trailer.
Right.
Because I think the trailer did tell me that it was going to be moved up a week. So I'm like, good. So now we can adjust my schedule accordingly. I'm there. That's all I don't. That's and I seriously doubt. Just like this year, 2018, the Avengers was the biggest movie. I have no doubt that it will be 2019 either.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be, well, first of all, because they've already hooked everybody who saw it the first time or saw the first part.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you have to show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a couple other things written down here that I'm curious to see if you've got an opinion or if you're aware of anything going on with them. Now, you mentioned Disney's live-action redos, some of which have been very, very successful. I loved Beauty and the Beast. I loved Cinderella, which people don't tend to remember at all, and I actually think it's the best one they've done so far.
I haven't seen any of them. Have you seen them all?
I don't know that I've seen them all.
Okay.
I'm actually trying to think right now what else they've done.
Last year they released 2, right? They released Jungle Book.
I have not yet seen Jungle Book.
And
I've heard great
Pete's
things.
Pete's Dragon.
I have not seen that either.
Gotcha. So I think last year was Jungle Book. Maybe that was 2 years ago.
No, I think it was. I think both.
Yeah,
because
Beauty and the Beast was last year, right?
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast was beginning of 2018. No, I think Beauty and the Beast was 2017.
Goodness gracious.
Maybe not, but whatever the case, I have greatly enjoyed some of the ones that I've seen. And then we got our first look at Aladdin, which is one of my favorite animated Disney films. And I love the color. I love the casting. I'm glad that we did not run into some of the typical American casting problems that, if in this case, if they had not gotten it right, the internet would have been right to go nuts over. And Will Smith is the genie when they first announced that he was going to be playing the genie, a role that everybody knows Robin Williams for.
Right.
All it took was me thinking back to the range that he showed on Fresh Prince and some of the Will Smith is great. He has been in some things over the past decade that were not great. But when he is capable of giving us a fantastic genie, I absolutely believe that. Nobody's ever going to top Robin Williams because Robin Williams, but you don't have to top him. You just have to create a different version of a memorable character, and I think Will Smith can do that. But seeing some of the stills, I was just kind of like, wow, this is interesting.
Last year I saw the touring production of Aladdin in the theater.
Oh, nice.
And it's the first time, I'm trying to remember this. Yeah, I think it's the first time I've seen a Disney production on stage.
Okay.
Now, they've done a lot, and there's been a lot that I've wanted to see, Lion King in particular. But this is the first time that we've ever got a chance to see one, and it was incredible. And
oh, wow.
Seeing it, I was, there was obviously the cloud of Robin Williams hangs over the role of Aladdin, but the guy that did it on the production that we saw, who was also black, by the way, was phenomenal. He was amazing, and within only a few minutes were you not even thinking about Robin Williams. He made it his own. He made it his own.
I like hearing that that's even
possible.
Right.
Yeah, he was not aping Robin Williams at all. He had just made it his own, and it felt amazing. So as long as the live action version does the same thing, I think it's going to be fine. Yeah. And it would be nice to see Will Smith come back to being Will Smith again.
Yeah, I would like to see. I'd like to see him kind of have a resurgence, because I think he's, of our generation, definitely one of the great actors with more memorable, and I hate to use the word important, but memorable, interesting roles than I think come to mind when you just say Will Smith. I think the mind sometimes kind of goes straight to some of the stuff that's not as good.
Yeah.
Like Wild Wild West, but stuff like that. But it's still fun, and he's still great. It's just that movie was terrible. But anyway, moving on. Beyond that, what has your interest level been in Dark Phoenix, or the X-Men movie franchise as it exists right now, I guess?
X-Men is not a group of characters that I ever was fully invested in. I think I've made it clear that I'm more of a DC guy.
Sure.
And the exception would be Spider-Man. There's two characters that I've been following my entire life. It's Batman and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And but outside of Spider-Man, I really didn't venture too much into the other characters. So, characters like Captain Marvel, who, is getting her own movie. I don't know really much about her. So I'm not going to be sitting there going, that's not the way it is in the comics, because I have no clue.
Yeah.
So for me, with the X-Men, it's been very similar of a journey as well. I've watched all the X-Men movies, and I thought one was when I say one, I thought one of the movies, which was the third one, was absolutely horrible. But the rest of them I've kind of thought were just kind of more or less consistently interesting to me. So I find them interesting. I don't own any of them, or I've never really watched a bunch of them over and over again. I just find them all really kind of cool and worth my money. But I don't get, terribly excited about them. I just go, oh, there's a new one coming out, and I go see it. I'm like, that was pretty good, and then move on with my life.
That sounds about right.
I expect that. So I expect that to be the same with the Phoenix one coming up.
Spider-Man and the X-Men were my Marvel comics.
Yeah, you've got two X-Men movies coming out this year.
Maybe.
I
don't know. Dark Phoenix. At this point, I don't know that I'll even go see that in the theater.
Oh wow! Oh,
yeah.
So you've not been happy?
No.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm not. I really enjoyed First Class. I liked Age of Apocalypse, or I guess it's just Apocalypse, which nobody else liked.
Like I said, I thought it was okay. I didn't really,
I thought Days of Future Past was terrible. I liked Logan. I loved Logan, actually. It's
that one I would put on more the better of them.
I think it's probably the most successful as far as being true to the comics and the characters. I think it's probably the most successful one. But I'm not interested in Dark Phoenix at all, really. New Mutants I was very interested in because it looked like they were trying something different. And now, from what I hear, and I won't know until I see it, but from what I hear, the studio has kind of gone back on the idea of it being an actual horror film, which is very true to the comics. If you go back and look at the Demon Bear saga and a lot of the stuff that Bill Sienkiewicz was working on, and Chris Claremont, the way that he wrote the New Mutants comics, they were very horror based. They had their roots in that feel. And it looked like New Mutants was going to be something a little different, and a horror movie that happened to be based on comic books. And from what I have read, the studio decided that's not what they wanted, and they've gone back, and that's why it's gotten pushed back twice now. And I'm much less interested in a New Mutants movie that lines up with how the X-Men movies are than something different.
Gotcha.
And if we're including Deadpool in it, I thought, well, one, if you think Deadpool needs to be rated R, you are wrong. However, the first one did a very, very good job of using that humor and being an entertaining movie. The second one I didn't particularly care for.
I enjoyed the second one a lot. It did. I think that was my default. Like, oh, okay, I'll put it in the 10. Like, I thought it was good enough that it lasted. It made it in my top 10. It was entertaining.
Wow,
it was entertaining enough. It's one that I thoroughly enjoyed when I was watching. So.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad.
So, and like you, I mean, I don't have any. Again, I don't have any investment in the character. I think I own maybe 2 Deadpool comics. Period, if that. And he doesn't really thrill me, like in his portrayal in the comics.
Sure.
But I do really think that the Ryan Reynolds films are something cool, and I think they've just done a phenomenal thing with them. So
yeah, I agree with that. Ryan Reynolds is a treasure.
Yes, although seeing him voice Pikachu in this new movie that's coming out this year I have no idea what that is. That just I can't even. I can't comprehend that.
I don't really know.
At first I thought, is this I was watching the trailer for this Detective Pikachu movie, and I'm watching it, and I hear Ryan Reynolds' voice, and I'm like, oh, this is just a faux Deadpool trailer.
No, sir.
And then it ends, and I'm like, wait, that was legit? I'm like, what? I don't know much about Pikachu, so or Pokemon for that matter. Is that the same thing?
Well, Pikachu is a Pokemon.
Gotcha. Right. So it's in that universe. So I don't really know much about that whole thing. I mean, I know it's a thing. So yeah. I'm not that blind. But I don't know much more than that. And I'm like, is this going to make them fans of that happy? Because it just seems very odd.
Well,
and it goes against what I would associate normally with that sort of thing.
From what I understand, or from what I have seen, Detective Pikachu is kind of a thing unto itself within the Pokemon. I don't think it's really canon, if you will.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a different thing, because there's a Detective Pikachu game that's,
gotcha.
I think, separate. But whatever the case, it looks really, really weird, and I'm in just for the spectacle of it.
Yeah. Well, there's some things where, it's so crazy it just might work.
Yeah. And I think that's where this one is leaning, because looking at the tone of the trailer, I think they're going with, this is a really weird idea, so let's just make it weird. So we'll see. I didn't think we would end up talking about Detective Pikachu. Little did I know. Let's see. Well, we've got, and you know what? We talked about 2 Marvel movies, and there's a ton of other stuff on this list, and I think we'll get to it. Oh, okay, no. Before we wrap this up, and before we get to the last thing I wanted to talk about, we have to discuss something. I'm actually not sure what your level of interest is in this property at all. What do you think of the Hellboy trailer?
I haven't seen the Hellboy trailer. I've seen some pictures, but I haven't watched the whole trailer.
Well, I guess that answers my question about your level of interest.
Well, I'm a Hellboy fan. I've read a lot of the comics, and I've seen the movies, and the 2 movies. I like those a lot. I like the first one a lot more than the second one. There were 3 animated movies, which I thought were pretty good.
Those are great. I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, so I'm interested, but I haven't. Like I said, I haven't. Trailers. I used to get really excited and just watch trailers all the time, but I must admit I don't know why specifically, but the last year or so I've just not been Like, oh, okay. And, you know, if I go to the movies and one's on in front of me, I don't leave the theater.
I'll be right back.
Like, oh, damn, I don't want to see this. I'm just gonna get there right in the nick of time. Thank God for assigned seats now. I also like will watch some on YouTube and that kind of things, but I don't go out of my way. So yeah, I haven't seen. I'm curious about it because I do think that it's a franchise that I'm glad is continuing.
Not exactly.
You're not?
Well, I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro's movies. I recognize that they diverge a little bit from the tone of the comics, but I was okay with that because, you know, like we were talking about with the genie, it's possible to do different things with the character. Or you know, Batman's the prime example of we have Adam West, we have Ben Affleck, we have, you know, all of these different portrayals of Batman that are all valid and are all entertaining, but all very, very different. So, you know, that was just doing Hellboy kind of in a different way. And the promise of this new Hellboy was that it would be a little more true to the comics. And like New Mutants, it was going to be a horror movie. With Neil Marshall at the helm, there was no doubt in my mind that's what it would be. And if you haven't seen the trailer yet, then you're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about. It looks like the biggest, most ridiculous 80s action bullshit golden child movie you've ever seen.
Ouch.
Yeah, I was appalled. Now, I will admit this. If I had not been expecting a more intimate, horror-oriented adaptation, I don't know that I would have been as put off by the trailer. But they play like a remix of Billy Idol's Moni Moni throughout the whole trailer. It's bright. It looks like, oh gosh, this hadn't occurred to me until just now, and I don't even want to say it, but I'm going to. It looks like Batman Forever as compared to Batman Returns.
Wow.
I hate to say that.
Yeah,
that's how I feel now.
That's not a good sign.
And Hellboy, to me, looks really off-putting and ugly. And I'm a big fan of David Harbour from Stranger Things.
Yeah, I think he's really well cast.
I agree, but the makeup, from what I have seen thus far, the makeup looks like ass.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
And that's not in comparison to Ron Perlman, because nobody's ever going to look that good as Hellboy. But I feel like in trying to not make him look just like Ron Perlman looked, they went too far in some direction. And I'm not happy about this trailer at all. And I'm perfectly willing to be proven, or to have my mind changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm still probably going to show up as soon as I can in the theater to see this movie. It's not a deal where I'm like, fuck this, because we all know what happens with trailers. People, the trailer people make them. The people who make the movie don't make the trailers, in general.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Russo brothers.
And I think that's why I just have no patience for them now, because one of two things happens. Usually when I see a trailer, either I feel like I've seen the whole movie.
Oh yeah, I hate that. Ugh.
Or I feel like they lie.
Yes.
So they'll try to sell me on a tone or make a movie that's not like something. They'll make it look like something just because they know that something appeals to people.
Right.
Like, let's make this movie look like Guardians of the Galaxy, even though it has nothing like that, because people like Guardians of the Galaxy, so they'll see this if we make the trailer look that way.
And that could very well be what happened with this Hellboy trailer, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is a jokey, bright, action-packed, like, hey, look at all the fun we're having type of thing. which is not at all what I was expecting.
Wow.
From this
you know
movie.
what? You know what? I hadn't ever thought of this before, but just because we've connected those two now I'm really wanting to see a Hellboy movie directed by James Gunn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Honestly, I'd watch anything directed by James Gunn.
I know you would, but I'm specifically thinking that he would be perfect for that franchise.
He would absolutely have the chops for that. But fortunately, we're going to be seeing DC movies from him sooner than anything else.
That's the word. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, DC has so much stuff that they're throwing up against the wall. Until it comes out, I don't really pay attention to that either.
And that's why some of the movies on my list right now we're going to save for another day, because I think it's worth an episode to sit down and look at DC's insane slate of movies that may never happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were organizing our list. I can't believe that we're getting a Joker movie this year. That's just that made it through the gauntlet. Like, I was like, how did that make it through the gauntlet and come out? But it hasn't yet, so we'll see. But it looks like at least it was made.
Yeah, I mean, they've wrapped on filming. Well, the thing is, though, you've got Scorsese's name attached to it, and you've got De Niro in it. I mean, that's why that's happening.
Yeah. That does add a bit more elements to it.
I'm excited for it, man. Everything I've seen looks different and interesting. It doesn't look like they're trying to ape anything else. And I'm not saying it's definitely going to be good. It may be terrible. But it's more interesting to me that they're trying something completely different and giving another style of movie a chance than if they were trying to make like a Joker Deadpool movie. You know what I mean?
It feels so weird to think that a company that was a few years ago really trying to keep a tight control over what was on TV, what was in the movies, and wanting things to be consistent and not confuse people, audience members, are now just basically saying, fuck it.
Hey, I am all for fuck it. Because at this point, what other options do they have?
I think that's what they've actually kind of, basically they've come around to, like saying, well, look, what we wanted to do didn't work, so fuck it.
Let's try some other stuff.
Yeah, let's.
I'm fine with that.
And we're not sure which way to go, so let's just see where things go from here on out.
Well, to wrap this thing up, Mike Gordon, I know you've read a comic book or two in your time.
Just a few.
You might have even released some, unless I'm mistaken.
Just a small few.
But I do want to talk about comics a little bit before we go.
Well, that is something I actually, you know what? I don't get the chance to talk about comics very much. So
and it's because I think it's because it's so much easier to talk about movies and TV, because comics, everybody's reading different stuff. Yeah. Everybody has wildly varying opinions about what is good, what is worth reading, we all go and see the same movies. It's no big deal, but the comics are just a different beast to discuss.
And I'm finding it more difficult to a lot of my friends who were reading comics even 4 or 5 years ago have seemed to stop, which is disappointing to me.
Well, they cost a fucking fortune.
They do. Believe me, I know that they do. But I it's one of those things where I'm like, really? I mean, you're just going to get? I can't give them up. Like I just can't.
I can't seem to either.
I can give up titles. In fact, last year I gave up a title that I've been collecting since I can remember.
Oh, wow.
And, that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but I gave up Amazing Spider-Man after Dan Slott left. And I tried Spencer, and I was like, I can't justify this.
Oh, no, that's bad news, because here's what happened to me with that. I signed up for Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man based purely off of Superior Foes of Spider-Man. Because
gotcha.
I loved that. And and I had not been reading Slott Spider-Man, not for any particular reason, but just because it seemed like such an ongoing saga, and I never felt like I had a starting point with it. And I've got some collections upstairs I haven't gotten to yet, so I will at some point get back to Slott's stuff. But anyway, so I put it on my pull list, and the comic shop missed the first 2 issues. I'm sorry. I got the first issue. They missed issue 2 and 3. That's what I'm waiting, or what I've been waiting on. So they're up to issue, 11 or 12 now.
I don't know. They're coming out so fast.
So that's another problem I've got. That's another episode we need to do, is what the fuck is going on with comic books.
You know what? We need to do that.
But so I currently have like 9 of the 11 issues that have been released that I can't catch up on because I'm still missing 2 and 3, which I hopefully they're up at the shop for me now. So I hope I'm not going to sit down and realize that this thing's not any good.
Yeah, that would suck. And look, I know a lot of people are digging it. A lot of people dig Nick Spencer's work. I personally don't. Not his superhero stuff. I love his independent, The Fix. I like a lot. But I have not really liked his Marvel stuff.
Did you read Superior Foes?
I did not. I read Superior, but I did not get the sort of other titles that were going along with it. So, I'll
let you borrow it. Maybe you'll hate it. Maybe you won't. I really, really liked it.
So yeah, that's been the difficult thing, is not only finding people who are reading the same things I am, but also just finding people who are still reading them. And that's one thing. I'm like, it's like to me saying I didn't like that movie. I didn't like that series of movies, so I'm no longer going to go to the movies. Like I just I think too many people associate comics as people list it as collectibles, as a genre, as this, that, or the other thing, and it's just a medium, man. And there's good stuff and there's bad stuff.
Well, here's the thing, though, and here's where I understand people who have to call it quits, because there have been times where I have sort of had a moment of clarity and realized that I'm buying a lot of comics just out of habit, that I don't necessarily enjoy them enough to be paying what I'm paying for them. And I think, man, I could drop this book. Okay, I could drop these 4 books. What could I right now? Could I just drop everything? And there have been times where I really felt like, you know what, I could just stop because I'm just not loving it enough. And over the last 2 years, the times that's happened, I've known that I couldn't stop reading Saga. And here's the problem with there being one book that I know I have to keep reading is I'm going to have to keep going to the comic shop to get it. And if I go in the comic shop, I'm going to see, oh, what's this new issue of Batman? Well, what's this going on over here? As long as I'm still making that weekly trip to the comic shop for something, as long as something's compelling me that much, then I'm not going to be able to just stop reading. But if I just stop getting everything, then the comic shop will no longer be part of my life. And I'll be saving all of that money. And there are enough other things in the world for me to divert my attention to where I could just stop.
Well, obviously, I mean, if you think about it, like the price of, we'll say, 3 comics is a streaming service for a month.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and look at, so the value that you're getting is amazing. But on the other hand, I can also tell you as a comic maker, we can't make them any cheaper,
sure.
You know? So it is one of those.
Well, you can't make them any cheaper to the standards that the market unfortunately now demands.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, now, me personally, I've found that I'm really starting to just go more for the trades, and getting fewer and fewer books, weekly, monthly, whatever. Yeah. So I'll wait for the trade. But there are books. I mean, I'm really happy that there are books out there, and there are particular teams, creative teams, writers and artists that I just can't imagine not just stopping. Like, I just can't. Like, I'm like, if they're doing something, I want to read it. So, it was difficult for me to come up with a quote unquote top 10 of movies I saw this year. It was difficult for me to narrow down a top 10 of comics I read this year.
Yeah, I don't...
Because there's a lot of great stuff.
I think I could sit down and do a top 10 if I had to. But what I wanted to do was see if there was one title in particular, if there was something that stood out to you in 2018, and if there was something you were looking forward to, whether it's a run, a book, a certain creator in 2019.
I will say this. For 2018, there are two creators that made my list twice in the top 10. So rather than go with like a title, I'll go with creators.
Sure.
And one of those is Jeff Lemire, who finished up a run on... He finished up two books this past year. In 2018 with Descender, which is a sci-fi epic.
I have the first collection of that, but not because of Lemire, but because
of Dustin?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful artwork.
Yes.
And so, he finished up his run on that, and it is great. It is an awesome sci-fi saga epic. I recommend. I imagine now that the final issue has been out, I'm hoping that this year or sometime they release a huge volume of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that would be outstanding, and it was just so good. The other thing that he did that I enjoyed it tremendously was wasn't as long of a run, but he finished up a run on a book called Royal City, which is as different from Descenders as you can get. It's a very intimate, personal look at this family that went through some horrible tragedy, and they're trying to get their lives together. And it's just, it's not what the media tells us about comic books at all. It's not like action-packed, full of explosions, superheroes, sci-fi, nothing like that. It's just I think Jeff does these really well. If anybody out there remembers his Tales from Essex County series, this is a reminiscent of that. It's just so good. And he actually does the artwork for it himself. So I definitely recommend both of those. And then the other creative team that I love so much is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. They finished up a series called Kill or Be Killed in 2018, which I thought was phenomenal. Just so intense and street level. Just it was violent. It was full of action, full of intrigue, a little bit of mystery. It just really connected with me. Full of anger too, about things right now on a street level, which I really appreciated. And then they also did another sort of little story in their criminal universe, which is My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, and that was a nice one-shot hardcover that I got. So those were amazing reads for me last year. So whatever those guys are doing, yes, sign me up, more of the same. But as far as this year goes, I will say that it's sort of carrying over from last year, I think, that there was it really surprised me last year. I picked up all of Bendis's run on Jessica Jones, which was very welcome to come back to that and be like, oh, that feels like, the original series did. I dig the show, so this was really working for that. And then Bendis went and left Marvel and went to DC. I haven't read any of his DC work, much of it at all, so I don't know how he's doing over there. But I was concerned about Jessica Jones as far as the Marvel books goes, I'm like, well, certainly they're not going to stop doing Jessica Jones stuff because, the show's a hit and all that kind of stuff. So they actually...
or it was anyway.
Yeah, I know, right? So they came out with a series, a Jessica Jones series, the first one not written by Bendis, by Kelly Thompson. And I hadn't really read a lot by Kelly Thompson, but she knocked this out of the park. It was so good that she is definitely on my radar this year as far as whatever she's doing. If she's doing more Jessica Jones, then please, yes, I hope so. And as Marvel, whenever they seem to have a good writer, they always put like them on 4 books. So I'm kind of curious to see what else she might be working on for them. So that's one I'm definitely looking out for. And I'm not a huge Marvel guy, but I did appreciate what she was doing.
Yeah, I've never read a Jessica Jones. I've as much as I love Ultimate Spider-Man and think it's one of the greatest runs of a comic book ever.
Yeah.
There are enough other things of Bendis's I've read that I just could not deal with. So
I put Jessica Jones Alias, the original Alias, with his my favorite work of his.
Yeah, I need to check that out because I really liked Scarlet, which was another female protagonist book that was really, really well done that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I haven't read that one.
I think I like him when he's writing about a character.
Yes.
His team
more than
books
groups
are problematic.
Yeah.
I hate that word. Why did I say that? His team books are not good. Ugh. Ugh. All right. Well, it's very interestingly, I'm going to feed off of what you just said and mention that with Jeff Lemire, his Black Hammer.
Oh, yes. I didn't even think about that this year.
That he has created is just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Taking all of the classic comic book tropes.
All of them.
And just giving us these wonderful, fully fleshed out characters that happen to be every superhero thing you've ever seen.
But yet feel fresh.
Yes. It does not feel worn out. It does not feel
like he's stealing.
Like your typical, we're going to turn this on its head. Like, it doesn't feel like that.
No.
I love Black Hammer. But actually, what I was going to mention is Batman White Knight.
Oh, yes. That made my top 10.
Man, I love it. It blew me away. I loved every panel of it. I want an animated adaptation. I want toys. And this year, we are getting a sequel.
Oh, are we? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Batman, Curse of the White Knight. It's going to be part of DC's Black Label. It is also by Sean Gordon Murphy, which, by the way, if you're not following him on Instagram, you should be. He puts up a lot of really cool process stuff, lots of behind the scenes. I saw a lot of panels that were out of context. He never posts anything that could be considered a spoiler, but he'll post work in progress that you later on realize, like, oh, I did not realize that Mr. Freeze was that panel from that moment. Like, he's got a really, really good, fun Instagram account. But, Batman Curse of the White Knight is probably one of my most anticipated things of 2019. Plus, whatever the heck else Tom King is doing. I don't know if you're caught up or how much you're enjoying Tom King's run.
I am enjoying Tom King's run. I can't say I love it, but I'm enjoying it. There's been some inconsistencies with some of the stories, but I've been enjoying it. I'm not completely caught up. I think I'm about 2 months, which means I'm about 18 issues behind.
Seriously, yeah, it's ridiculous.
And but I will tell you that Joel Jones's Catwoman series is phenomenal.
Oh, really? See, I almost added that to my list, and it was just one of those things where I love her artwork.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I've got a Harley Quinn statue that she designed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I love her art, but I was just like, sometimes that whole artist writing a comic thing doesn't pan out so well.
Did you read Lady Killers?
No.
Okay, that was amazing too.
So she's got a history of writing.
Yes.
Okay. See, I wasn't.
And she's good at it.
Okay.
It's not just it's not a typical like, oh yeah, writer and artist. Yep. But
right.
Yeah. So no.
So she's not David Finch.
She's not Tony Daniel.
Well, you know what?
Say that out loud? I'm
he's
sorry.
not. To me, he's not even the worst offender of that particular.
No, he isn't. No, he isn't.
Because
I didn't mean to. Yeah.
That got put on him more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think he handled a very difficult, high-profile situation as best he could. Now, later on, maybe he should have stepped back a little bit. But yeah, Sean Murphy, anything that he did,
The Wake,
yes, with Snyder, right?
Yep.
Oh
yep.
my gosh, wonderful! I'm still waiting for a movie adaptation of that because it was so just cinematic and well contained, and oh man, I loved it.
That would be weird because that is a series that, I mean, it starts off as one thing, and you think it's going to be like this. Almost like, oh, James Cameron, this is made for James Cameron to make a movie of, right?
It would have to be like a miniseries.
Then it turns into something like, it does not, it ends up a very, very far away place than where it starts.
Yeah, it would have to be like a Netflix miniseries or something, and it would have to be very carefully, I don't know that curated is the right word, I'm sure it isn't, but they would have to be very true to the source material.
Yeah, it would be tricky to pull.
It could go wrong easily.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see it as well, but only in the right hands.
Yeah.
Which I guess I could say about anything.
Well, that's true. I sure hope somebody that sucks gets a hold of this thing that I love. Oh yeah. Well, there you go. I think I feel pretty good. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think. Do you feel pretty good about this year?
2019. I mean, at the beginning of the year, there's always a mix of sort of melancholy for, gosh, can certain things be as good this year? And what's going to happen? What's going to be going on? But as far as entertainment wise, for sure, this year is going to be crazy as far as what we're going to see on television, in theaters, from comic books. Like, there's so much coming out. And my only concern is keeping up with it all.
Yeah, we got a big old Star Wars movie coming up at the end of the year.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that one, which I guess we'll...
It's way too early for that, but it's going to be... I mean, how that plays out is going to be really interesting to see.
Well, it's going to dictate... we were talking earlier about how Disney is fighting itself in theaters and in the toy aisles, and the success of Episode 9 is going to determine, what a quarter of Disney's business for the next 20 years.
I have a feeling that 2019 is a year that it's an odd numbered year. It's the one right before 2020. And I think 2020, just everybody, like, it just sounds like a year that everybody wants to get to.
Well, it's the year of Arno Stark.
There you go.
Iron Man 2020, it's coming, baby.
So, and I think a lot of things, like, I don't know, I haven't really looked it up, but I feel like there's a lot of, like, 2020, like, things out there, like, that have been pointed to. I mean, right now we're in the year of Blade Runner, which is weird to think, but this, at least the first one. But I feel like this year is going to be, like, it seemed like the celebrations, the well wishes and everything like that was kind of soft this year, like kind of lower key. So I do wonder if everybody is just kind of waiting to build up to, 2020 as like this big deal.
I think people just aren't sure we're going to make it to 2020.
God willing. Sure. Yes, I can definitely understand that.
Well, whatever the case, between now and then, we're going to have a good time watching movies, watching TV, and, of course, talking to each other on various podcasts that are going to go on really into eternity, is my plan.
Yeah, well, I don't show any signs of stopping. This is my 9th year, I think, podcasting. So.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
You are a glutton for punishment, my friend. Which is why I know we can always count on Mike Gordon to show up for Needless Things.
I've got nothing better to do.
Oh, come on.
That's not true.
That's
not true.
Aside from read your stacks of comics.
Exactly. I was going to say that's not absolutely that's not true. I love being here with you, man.
So, wrapping it up, is there any one thing that when I contacted you and said, "Hey, help me out, buddy. Let's talk about some stuff." Was there anything that you thought of that we didn't get to?
No, absolutely. I think we covered like most of the big things, and I especially like talking and hearing your thoughts on the whole thing about, like, to me, it's really what's going to be interesting this year is how, Disney's got a lot of big plays that they're doing, and they are really at front and center of pop culture right now. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got Star Wars, you've got their live action stuff, you've got Marvel. Like they really are it.
They really are. Everybody else is just trying to catch up.
Yeah. Well, shit. I don't. At this point, I think they're just trying to maintain. I can't imagine anybody is realistically thinking, all right, 2 moves from now, we're Disney.
I think Netflix is thinking that way. There's a big war between Disney and Netflix right now.
Yeah.
So I think that, but they're like the closest right now. I think everybody else is just going, we're just trying to survive, man.
Well, Mike, I hope you and I can both survive and thrive even in the new year. Why don't you tell us where you are and what you're up to?
Well, of course, you can find me every week on the Earth Station 1 podcast. Again, I'm celebrating I believe it's my 9th year on that show, delivering content, over 450 episodes. My God, it's just amazing. And so, yeah, you can find me there. And I've got some books that are coming out this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. If all goes well, so pay attention to. You can just go to newlegendmike.com to find out information about that as it develops.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man, and I look forward to talking to you again sooner than later.
Absolutely. Thanks again, man.
If you happen to be listening to the Needless Things podcast for the first time, I want you to know that the opening theme song and the track that you're listening to right now, as a matter of fact, is called Procrastibate and is by a band called Les Sexoflex, the dirtiest, funkiest, booty-shakingest band you've ever heard. And you can find them at lesexoflex.com. They're fantastic. Please do check them out, but only if you're of age to hear dirty adult lyrics. Otherwise, don't go there. And then the interstitial music that you heard between the introduction and my conversation with Mr. Mike Gordon is by our pals, the Mystery Men, who you can find at mysterymenofsurf.com. And, of course, you can find the Mystery Men and Les Sexoflex on Facebook and wherever else. Although Les Sexoflex technically is not an active group anymore, you can and should still get all of their music because it's fantastic. Some of the most fun, wonderful, enjoyable music I've ever heard in my life. Mystery Men of Surf, obviously you got a taste of that. It's tremendous, fast-paced, upbeat surf music, except for when they play something that's a little slower and more mellow, which is nice too. I like hearing that in the car because in Atlanta traffic, you can't always be listening to up-tempo stuff. You can get yourself in trouble. So there you go. First episode of 2019 in the can. I hope you enjoyed it. Please visit needlessthingspodcast.com, where you can interact with the Needless Things irregulars all the time, and or I guess read stuff from us. You can interact with us on Facebook in the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group, and you can find me as Phantom Troublemaker on Instagram. I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Needless Things Podcast. You're the best. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Downcast, or in the ears of a Trader Vic's employee. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.